Hey people, it's Anne. Do we have a lot of people in chat? Hello, I see some of you. Hello everybody. I'm waving at the giant chat screen in the room just in case you wonder what I'm waving at. So good morning. Welcome to the second inaugural episode. I guess you can't have an inaugural second episode. You just have a second episode, but it sounds so anticlimactic. But welcome to the second episode of Reaper Pro Tips. So hello. There we go. Now I've got some happy people. Hi Jacob. Hi David. Hi Reaper is my addiction. Hi Lady War. Hi everybody. Yay! Yes, good morning Reaper Nation. That's what we should just call it. We should just say good morning Reaper Nation. So today in Pro Tips, we're upgrading a little bit here. Although I guess dark skin was pretty advanced, all things considered. But we're going to do non-metallic metal today. I have a model in front of me who is one of the newer Bones models that was featured in like your monthly free mini that you could choose to get if you order a certain amount of stuff. It's a female elf wizard, and her number is 44008. She's got a nice intricate staff top that I thought we would do some fine NMM on. So just to show you guys kind of both NMM on fine details is pretty much what we're looking at today.
Thank you for the tier 3 sub, Jacob. And thank you,
Oh yeah,
John.
Yay subs. Prove that my new show is worth it. Yes, exactly. Awesome. So super. Oh, and I have an announcement actually early on just for you guys. My Patreon, I mentioned this yesterday, is running a special offer right now. So I queued it in. It should be live. If not now, then very, very shortly. But essentially, if you sub at the $5 tier, you get all of last year's $10 content as well. So that's a ton of hours and PDF pages. We did like 35 PDFs and 29 videos last year. So a lot of content, and about at least a dozen of that is $10 content. So you may want to go take a look. I'll be putting up a post later tonight, but I ran out of time this morning, which is why we're so on the edge starting the show. So here we are. You prefer to call them? No, let's not go there, Dungeon Journeyman. Bad Dungeon Journeyman. 50 DKP minus. Oh, awesome. Chai tea recipe for Anne on Instagram. Thank you, Planar Crossroads. Awesome. So let's get to it. Let's actually, I did not get my base coat. What is the name of my Patreon? Thank you. It is patreon.com/paintingbig, all one word. Yeah, I don't know though, Polith. I don't know if I trust it. It's just my system is pretty fragile on that. So it'd be interesting to try. Maybe I'll try it. That's an interesting tip. I do have baking soda because I bake all the time. But interesting.
Thank you for the sub, Lady War.
Yeah. Ooh, Lady War sub. Yay. Ooh, 4-month streak even. Hello, Princess Zelda. All right, so I've got my colors lined up for NMM today. We are using the classics, everybody. We are using the NMM Triad. So let's line them up in the top of our screen. Oh, there we go. There they are. Oh, wrong color. Ha! It fooled me. Oh, except of course I don't have a real label on my NMM Gold base because I'm using the prototype bottle still. Look, this is how prototype that is, guys. This is one of the first bottles of NMM Gold base. But it's going to be in the middle of this triad. So let me find my... Did I seriously not have my NMM Gold Shadow? I am seriously discombobulated today, Justin.
Yeah, it's been one of those days already.
It's been one of those days. You know what that means? That means I show everybody how to mix NMM Gold Shadow out of things that you have in the house, around the house. Yeah, that's it. So we're going to use russet brown and mix one.
And if you could move those down just a little bit to see the skew. I know the one in the middle doesn't have one.
Yeah, but anyway, you can infer the one in the middle because it's the number before this. So pretty much the NMM Gold Triad is 9301 to 9303. And they are very, very good colors for this sort of thing if you've never done gold non-metallic metal and you don't know what to use. You can also... NMM actually is non-metallic metal. So people throw that term around a lot. And what it means is just generally what, illustrators and painters and comic book people have been doing forever, which is painting metallics just using regular paint, with not shiny paint.
Right, they're imitating it with shadows and such, right?
Yeah, it's essentially highlighting and shading, and then a specific color set. But the interesting thing about this is that NMM is really good when you need to do something metallic, but it has a lot of tiny detail like this staff top. Let's see here. Where am I in focus? Well, you can kind of see Did we set up our camera?
No, the focus can be adjusted. Let me, do you want to do that? Or do you want me
If
to
I
come
remember how to.
hit the
You
little-
may have to go and help me because
Okay.
I do not have it memorized. But yeah, and we will want to definitely have a little bit closer on this one because she has such tiny detail on her staff. It's kind of like a braided gold top. There we go. That's a little bit, oh. Well, you guys get the, there we go. You guys get the idea. Ooh, there we are. We can see it. Yay. So when you're dealing with something this intricate, it really helps to do NMM instead of metallics. Metallics have such sparkle that the reflections will essentially just lose the detail. You'll lose the fine detail if you paint this with metallics. It's really hard. You could do shaded metallics and yeah, carry it off if you were really tight. But NMM is easier for small things like this if you want to keep the detail but still have it look shiny. So that is what we will do. And since I am a dork and totally somehow forgot my NMM gold shadow, one thing you can do if you do not have NMM gold shadow is you can mix NMM gold base with a bit of russet brown. You can also use walnut brown, but that's got a lot of black in it, so it'll take it a little greenish. Could be a good base for bronze, though. Let me get my paint squeezed out here. Pokey tool is needed. My old sample bottle is recalcitrant this morning. There's your $2 word for the it being before noon and Anne having insufficient caffeine. There we go. Yay. So usually 4, 5, 6, 7, that's about 8. I use 8-drop formulas in my well palette, and the reason that I use the 8-drop formula is that it creates a very large paint puddle in the well palette, which means that it's going to stay at the consistency I need for longer. The more paint you use in your well palette, the more stable the consistency will be. So usually when people have problems with a well palette, they aren't using enough paint, and so their paint just dries out super fast, because what you're looking for is a paint depth to surface ratio where there's a fairly deep puddle and a fairly small surface ratio, which is why I like these very small well palettes. They're very tiny. They're only about the width of like a thumb. So essentially what that lets me do is that once I add my water into this and mix it up, it's going to be quite a deep color. And you're really not wasting paint. If you're afraid of wasting paint and that's why you use a wet palette, keep in mind that with a ceramic palette like this, you can actually just put some saran wrap over the top and it will stay pretty good for at least a day. If you add some water to the wells around it, you can actually get it to stay good for I'd say 2, outside 3 days. I've had paint stay good for 3 days if it's fresh when I put the saran wrap on and I add some water to the surrounding wells. So it is possible to save your paint on a well palette. The other thing to always remember when I hear people who are afraid of wasting paint is to remember that each of these bottles has like 400 drops of paint in it. And so it's going to take you a very long time, even at 8 drops a go, to go through a bottle of paint. So I just added 3, so I'm at an 8-to-3 ratio. Let's see what we get. That's actually really close. That's not a bad start. We'll go there. We'll go there. We'll start there. I usually actually start a little darker, but we can shade, so we'll do that. Hi, everybody. Yes. Oh, good. Everybody is educational today. That's good. You may notice my words are definitely like impaired when I stream this early in the morning. It's just not terribly early, but it was a long night because my dog was sick, so I was up a lot. We're just going to paint this right over. And I did wash these bones, so that's why I'm able to use a thinned base coat, by the way. I like to use a thinner base coat. I don't like to use thick. So for bones, in order to get it to adhere, you really want to wash the model beforehand. So I take my bones home and I throw a bunch of them into a plastic mixing bowl with hot water and a little bit of dish soap, and I swoosh them around for, a good 30 seconds. And then I rinse them very thoroughly and I let them dry overnight on a dish towel or a paper towel. And that essentially will let you use a thinner base coat, if you like that sort of thing, without worrying about adhesion. So we've got our base, and that's a pretty good base color for NMM gold. You can see how yellowy it is. It looks like it almost looks golden as it is with the with wet bringing the highlights out. Yeah, there's Ren's tip, exactly. Put almost stripping sponges on top of the same kind of palette. Reset the sponges once a day. Great. That's a great tip, Rhonda. I'll have to try that one. I like my saran wrap trick, but the sponge is totally doable too. All right. Yeah, sad for sick dog. I was very sad too, Numbet, because I was up like 3 times during the night, and of course, you know, when you do that, your adrenaline gets pumping and then you can't go back to sleep right away. So I'm a very short sleep band today. Just kind of pulling off some of the excess here so it dries a little faster. So with NMM, highlights and shadow placements are as important as the color usage. And what you're going to do is figure out your light sourcing. So just like a lot of people do the zenith highlighting, where they spray the mini black and then spray a white layer down to simulate where the light goes, that's a great way to start thinking about NMM, because it at least tells you where your brightest highlights should be. With this, though, I'm just going to pretty much draw a line down the staff. The light, I'm assuming, is kind of diffused overhead, so my highlights are going to hit at the top of each area that sticks out. And then right under that is going to be a shadow, because to get something, maybe Rex. I did one. I've done a couple of them for my Patreon. I might be able to do a glow effect one. I think I was going to do glowing eyes on the fire giant eventually. If you have a plastic well palette, you should be able to use Rhonda's trick, Elwindle. If you just get a big sponge, they sell some really big sponges for maybe for cars. I've seen them. You could cut it to shape to go over your palette nicely, and then you'd be able to leave a wet sponge on top, and it should still work with a plastic palette at that point. Even so, though, 400 divided by 8, gosh, you'd have to paint. If you painted with that color every day for a month and a half, you would eventually run out of it, which is still not bad for a $3.50 bottle of paint. So I'm always kind of like, I'm not careful with how much paint I use, obviously, but I know how long it takes me to go through a bottle. All right, so we're drying out, so I'm going to go in with a shadow color. You can use brown liner or walnut for this. I'm going to lift the mini up so we're back in focus in just a second, guys. You could also use something like Ebony Flesh, 9440. Walnut brown is what I'll use today. That's 9136. You also, brown liner is 9064. Brown liner is pretty good for this, but remember that it is somewhat transparent when you thin it, so you won't get a really hard shadow if you use brown liner, unless you're building it up. I only need a little bit of walnut, so I'm actually going to only do 4 drops. We'll do a 2 drops paint to 1 drop water ratio, which is a starter, pretty much my starter mix for figuring stuff out. I start with that, and then I tune it depending on how I'm using the color. Walnut has extremely good coverage, however, so that is not going to impact the coverage very much. And I do want a pretty strong line. In order to make something look shiny, you require, there's 2 qualities I should start. There's 2 qualities to metal, shiny and reflective. And they're related, right? So obviously, because both have to do with light reflection. But, there we go. But shiny, how you get a shiny effect or simulate a shiny effect is by putting your really bright brights next to a really dark dark. If you look at how light reflects off my ferrule, and actually it's perfect right now, note the highlight, which is slightly to the top of middle. Notice that on either side of that, you've got very dark shadows. And then on the underside of the brush, you see how it's reflecting my skin tone? This is a perfect study for how to paint NMM right here on the brush ferrule. So what we're going to do is we're going to map out where our highest highlight goes. Then we're going to introduce those dark shadows, and then we are going to do a reflected light reflection on the underside of surfaces. Now this is very tiny, so we may not get all of those in. We may have to kind of simulate it. We will see. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. So now we're up to a 1.5 or 1 point. It's like a 1/3 or something ratio. So it's 4 drops of paint, 3 drops of water. I'm going to switch to my very, very sharp brush, my Da Vinci Maestro, with the very fine tip, because I want to get close on this. I want to get tight. So let's grab that. I know I'm talking a lot at the beginning of this one, but NMM is fairly complex, and a lot of people don't know what it is necessarily. So all right, right away, underneath this top sphere, you can see there's a dark shadow. So right away, that cues me into the fact that I need to paint that dark shadow. Sure, there is a dark shadow naturally, but with miniatures, you have to accentuate the contrast. So all these places that I see a kind of a natural dark shadow from the sculpt, I'm going to add in a little bit of my walnut, just to make sure I don't forget. that those are really dark shadows. So really dark shadow, and it's convenient because that's right as the light falls on the model right there. I'll probably add more lining in a bit, but right now I just want to set up a bright light and a dark shadow. So I'm going to grab my pure white, and metal is one of the few times that you really use pure white for highlights. A lot of other surfaces, you don't need to actually go up to white. You usually go up to white mixed with your color. So let me put her down, grab some white, and we're going to just pretty much put a dot. With something this small and intricate, you really only need a small a dot to suggest your light. Let's see, just make sure she stays in focus. You can see already it's kind of looking gold because it's the right color, and we have our shadows down. So now I'm going to leave my white fairly strong. I'm going to probably leave it at a 2-to-1. We'll see how it does. May have to make it a little stronger. And I'm using pure white, which is our highest pigmented white. That's 9039. Oh, hi, Sigwolf. Yay! Yeah, I know. Sometimes I find Go Live notifications are kind of dicey with platforms. Not only Twitch, but I've seen it on Crowdcast and other stuff too. It just seems to be... It's probably all the filters and crazy stuff that everybody's got protecting their emails and notifications. All right. So right here, now we have to kind of decide what we're going to do with this middle area, whether it's going to be gold, this round area, or if it's going to be a gemstone. I'm kind of leaning toward gemstone, so right now I'm going to ignore that area. I'm not going to put a highlight on it. So actually, maybe I should block it in. We'll block it in a second. So all right, bright. I know I'm going to have a bright highlight. I might have some sideways highlights too. Round areas are difficult because you're looking at a cylinder essentially, and you're trying to figure out where your light is. But in general, this edge is going to catch the light and reflect it toward you. And then as you move down, this top edge is going to catch the light also. So obviously you need a nice skinny brush for this. Although if you use a thicker brush and you screw up, you can always go back with your base color. So that's why we kept that nice and wet there. You can always go back with your base color and touch up, or with your walnut. So there, and there, and there. We're just going to pretty much go down and pretend we're kind of outlining in white. Now, it is hard to hit this very strongly because these are such fine details, but we're actually going to hit twice. So there are two, hopefully you guys can see this, there are two areas for each of these little braids. There's a top edge and then there's a center section. So I will hit both with this highlight. And I want to keep them right above, right in line, so that it looks like the light is glancing down the front of the staff. So wherever your white is where your light is. Let's see here, then this guy down here, and I messed up a little bit, so that's fine, I can go back. And I have to make sure that it looks right. So now, see, it's starting to look shiny-er, just with highlights and shadows. But we don't have any kind of mid-tone. We've only done our brightest brights, our darkest darks, and then kind of a mid-dark base coat. So we have a lot more work to do to make this look really like gold. First, though, I'm going to block in that gem and make it dark so it's not distracting. Because when it's gold, it definitely looks like it should have highlights, and I don't want that. Yes, Sigwolf is correct, all that. Oh, Josie RK, I wanted to say that's a paint chemistry thing. Yellow pigments are one of the lowest coverage pigments, so that's what you're seeing. A bright yellow doesn't have any white in it, so it's necessarily going to cover worse because white is the highest coverage pigment. So a pale yellow is definitely going to cover better than a white, or than a bright yellow, sorry. That is a fact of pigment life until they make synthetic pigments that have freaking fantastic coverage no matter what it is, which they work on. They work on it a lot. Our high coverage pigments, the HD line and the Bones line are done with high density pigments. So our yellows have slightly better coverage, but it's still not perfect. I'm going to put in my shadow a little bit again because I lost it. And then I'm going to see if maybe this is too much detail for something so tiny, because the shadow gets too much very quickly.
There are some people who want to see it a little closer, by the way, Anne. So if you want to like, yeah.
There we go. I think that's more in. So essentially what happened here, and I don't mind making mistakes in front of you guys because now you'll learn, is that my dark got too strong. Because really the dark shouldn't overpower the light source. So what I'm going to do here is I'm probably going to glaze a little bit over my base coat, which is why I kept my base coat around, over those darks to just take them down a little. I don't want to cover them, but they need to get a little bit less. I still need more, I need more yellow than I have walnut. And I'm going to leave the dark shadow inside the holes and recesses. I'm just going to try to minimize it on each little braid. That's a little bit better. Let's see. There we go. Trying to make sure I keep in focus. Yeah, Sig Wolf, you've got it. Yeah, send pun Wolfie. Only happy accidents. I actually don't mind at all. This is how I paint, pretty much. You're just seeing how I paint at home. I try something, I think it's going to work, I accidentally mess it up, I fix it. It's not a big deal, and you should never stress over mistakes or over, messing something up. You can always fix it. The great thing about working with thin paint on miniatures is that you would have to cover it with so many coats to glob up any detail that you essentially have a lot of fixes you can do without losing detail on your model. So you should just never stress, just do it. Do try to learn from your mistakes. Like, try to isolate what's wrong so that you can fix it. So let's do some NMM Gold highlight. I'm actually going to, since I started with a slightly lighter color, I think I'm going to mix this directly into my base coat. And I do this a lot. I use the NMM Gold Triad, but I muck about with it a lot. I mix them together, and sometimes I add different colors. There. In fact, I will be.
There is no freebie today.
Yeah, this is such a new little show. I think we'll have a freebie this afternoon, though, won't we? From my other show?
Will. Yeah, the primary shows. This is going to become eventually a daily show.
Right.
So right now we're focusing less on the giveaways for this particular show.
No brown liner coffee nor nerdery beer. I left it downstairs, so I am making do with what I do. Hi, Scott Beal. Yes. Yeah. It might be a daily Ann. Yeah, that's the plan, Sig Wolf. Daily Ann and twice on Wednesdays. It's crazy talk. That's because Sadie has taken over so much of my mixing stuff. So I am now free to do more teaching for you guys. I'm going to do a mix here. Let me just grab a blob and grab a blob. Mix it up. I think I want it lighter. The other thing that you should know with a very small surface, guys, is that you don't really need to blend. With something this tiny, spot highlights and spot shadows will be just fine. You have so little space to blend that it'll look like a blend even if you don't. Yeah. You guys are funny. Yeah, sorry, this is a complex topic, so we are definitely going into it. There's so much to talk about between painting fine detail and NMM. In retrospect, I probably should have started with a painting fine detail and then gone to an NMM and then did a combo of the two. What I'm doing now is my highlight color, kind of putting it on the sides and seeing how that brings everything up. I'm going to hit the major braid on the side here and see if that lightens the color. And if it looks more like gold. There we go. Doop. So that brings it up more toward yellowy. Although we've lost a little bit of our... yes, NMM is your bane. Well, it's my bane today too, so yay! Yeah, Norwegian Gadget Man. This is a very, very small model. I really liked her, and she has an awful lot of small details to tackle because she's got this great little this design on her inner cloth, and we could do some hair. We could do that. We could do cloth blending. She's got a lot of things that we can teach. She's just so tiny. I'm going to put the same kind of highlight on the other side. Then I'm going to have to see if I need to put some serious lining on this. I think I might need to. Because sometimes when it's this small, if you really want these details to pop up, you've got to line it. Got no choice. Let's see here. Let's grab some white. Don't want to lose my highlight on this lower part. You can see how having a brush with a very good point, having a good Kolinsky, is worth its weight in gold on this sort of thing, guys. Because that way it's not frustrating. If you had a brush that did not keep a point like this would be so frustrating. It would just make you want to like throw your brushes against the wall at the end of the exercise. And we don't want that. The point is that we love our hobby and we want it to be enjoyable. We do not want it to be frustrating ever. So that's why good materials, good paint, good brush, and learning how to use them, arriving at a palette that you're comfortable with and a style that you're comfortable with, all these things are important to reduce frustration. And I'm mixing some walnut brown with my base coat now, just to see if I can get a... the reason I'm doing that is that I want the shadows, but I don't want them so harsh. So, yeah. Oh, well, Ellie Otter, if you... Essentially, what I always tell people at Paint Club, and there's a lot of new people at Paint Club, and they really run into frustration sometimes with bad brushes. And if you take good care of your brushes, like if you don't leave them nose down in the water jar and you at least rinse them nicely after every session, and you don't forget that there's paint in them, and you don't dip them in super glue, and all the other things, if you take good care of your brushes, it is definitely worth saving up the 10 or 15 bucks for a very good brush, because it's going to last you for years. This brush is at least 2 years old, and it still comes to a perfect tip. So... we're painting a sludge monster. Probably the same ones I did on Gator Dragon, like Swamp Green. Yeah, you see what I'm going for? Swamp Green and, you know, any other colors that you want to. I usually like kind of burnt oranges, ochre yellows. With Swampy Dragon, I did a blue highlight, a bright blue highlight, kind of like cold light filtering down through swampy trees. It depends on the highlight and shadow what you want to do, but I like using... Swamp Green is a swampy color. It's named that for a reason. I am going to try to get these little tiny details to stick out, and my brush is just a little bit too loaded. Yes, Riot. So you Riot 54, you do not want to buy a good brush. It would die. It would make a small sad sound as it died from being left in the paint water. And I'm going to try to just up contrast, because with something this tiny, if we want all these details to stand out, I'm using my mixture of walnut and our base coat color right now, because it'll give me a less harsh line, but it'll still give me a shadow. So that's starting to look a little better now. See it? See how it's all standing out, and we're starting to see highlights and shadows. I really don't mind if I have a little bit more light on this side, because light is probably reflecting from the environment, which is how we get to reflective. So you've got your direct highlight, but by adding additional highlights to the edges of these areas, you can simulate light bouncing back, which is the other quality of metal, that it is reflective. So I'm going to go straight up to NMM Gold Highlight, which is one of my favorite yellows in general, by the way. If you do not own it, you should own it. It is a soft, good coverage yellow. Yeah, I have also super glued a brush in my lifetime, so I do not blame you thinking that the glue is dry and then you try to paint over it because you are impatient and trying to get something done, and then the next thing you know, your brush is dead and you cry a little bit. So I'm just going to hit highlights on the edges of this. I'm also going to come over and hit highlights on the other edge because it would bounce off of her hair and face. So at minimum with NMM, even with something so tiny as this, you will have a strongest highlight, you will have a darkest shadow, and you will have a reflective highlight. So at the very minimum, that's what you want. And then when you have a big, broad metallic surface, you can get a lot more intricate than that. Whether you want to is the question, but yeah, it depends on your subject matter. And as long as you nail those things, as long as you nail the highlight and the shadow and the reflection, then you can start thinking about, like, you know, tarnish and grit and dirt and all those special effects, scratches and scrapes and dents and fun and things like that. I'm just going to pop in a little bit more highlight here. But you can see I'm really only doing dots, but it's still starting to read. Yeah, Raphaels are nice. I like those too. Thou shalt dip the cuff brush carefully. Yes. Yes. Yes, all of these commandments, Norwegian Gadget Man is absolutely correct. Yes, exactly. I support that message. But I mean, your brush is a tool. It helps you paint better, and so treat it with respect. You paid money for it, so treat it well if you want it to last. Now, who doesn't want their favorite brush to last? Like, I use mine pretty much until they're ready to die because for some reason, probably my frequent rinsing, my brushes get skinnier rather than losing their tips, and so I can still paint with them as they get skinnier and skinnier, which makes it very, very helpful when I'm trying to do really micro detail like this, but on a much larger model. Planar Crossroads, I am a Da Vinci girl through and through. I love the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1. I also like the Series 11 size 0. They both have excellent tips and a decent body, so they hold enough fluid without being overdone, and I find I can control the flow of paint off of them very well because they're a thinner brush. Because I work a lot with layering and with thinned paint, a thinner brush works better for me. If you use a lot of thicker paint mixes, then go for a thicker or fuller bodied brush. There's a definite relationship. What kind did you get him, Lady Azrith? And did you threaten him within an inch of his life that he had to, like, be respectful of them? RESPCT? That's what brushes mean to me, or something like that. Let's paraphrase Aretha. I'm putting a lighter highlight now up on the top part of this. You can see how I'm just adding highlights, and how every time I add a brighter highlight next to this dark line, the dark shadow, all the details pop better. So here we go. That's good, Rad54. At least you don't abuse them all. Yes, Knowledge Bomb. Well, this show is all about Knowledge Bomb, even if it comes from you guys. I mean, you guys all have been painting for, cumulatively, if we added up all of your years and months of painting, it would be a lot. Probably more than me. Rosemary and Company. Yeah, and I keep meaning to order Rosemary and Company, and I just have not gotten to it. I will eventually. Games and Gears travel set. Oh, cool. Well, just because he's better than you at painting doesn't mean you can't threaten him to within an inch of his life that you better take care of the brushes you got for him. Seriously. I thought good relationships were all about threatening each other within an inch of their lives. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a malfunction on my part. But I guess I don't threaten David within an inch of his life. Usually because he's much wiser than me. There we go. All right, so pretty good. Shiny and pretty good. Let's do a gemstone. I'm in the mood to do it. What time is it, Justin? How much time have we sucked up?
It is 11:40.
Really? And we started a little late, so I could go just, a little tiny bit. Do you guys know the easy gemstone? A lot of you guys probably already know how to do easy gemstones. Da Vinci, it's Punwuffy. Usually it's always dickblick.com for all brushes because they have a nice guarantee, and if the brush arrives totally screwed up, they will replace it for free. And you can find Da Vinci Maestro on there. We used to have a vendor at ReaperCon who would always bring them for me too, but Tori has dissolved Hanger 18 to my great distress and dismay. So I'll have to sucker some other company at ReaperCon into bringing my favorite brushes. I am going to... Oh, you live by a Dick Blick store, Lava Being? Very lucky, and also very dangerous to your budget. Although you can get I think, better prices online for a lot of their stuff because they're really a huge online retailer. Trashorama, I don't know about that because there are so many. Steel is hard because you are... Hold on. Getting things for the gemstone. Steel is hard because you're dealing with grays and silvers, right? And the problem with them is that you can have all sorts of colors reflected in that. So at base, for a steel triad, you're doing a bit of, a gray triad. But we already have gray triads that you can use for NMM. And the newest one that is really usable for NMM is actually in Kickstarter. It's the carbon black or carbon gray, moonstone blue, and foggy gray triad. That's actually a good NMM steel triad because the moonstone is actually bluish, so it allows you to suggest the blue reflecting from the sky, which you don't normally see so much in gold, but you do in steel and silver. I'm going to put a secondary little spot highlight on this side. You can see I'm just mucking around at this point, making it shinier. See them all? Shiny. And we got all the details to stand out, which is important. So I'm going to do a quick gemstone. Let's see here. Yeah, well, Dick Blick has an immense catalog online, so none of their stores can possibly carry it all. But it's nice to live near one because at least then you know you can get a proper bottle of gouache or watercolor or a proper brush if you need one in a pinch and you don't have time to wait for shipping. All right, I'm going to do a red gem, I think. Let's see here. What shall I use to shade it with? What do I have on my plate? I have Auburn Shadow. That might work. Let's see here. Anne is doing back-to-back shows. I am boat times. I am now doing 11 a.m. Central Time, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I will be on 3 days consecutively. Plus, I'm still doing the Dragon Show on, as we fondly call it, on Wednesday afternoons. And I just pestered Justin about doing random streams on Monday or Friday every once in a while, so we'll see. So this is a tiny gemstone. I won't be able to do much detail. Yeah, it's at that point, yeah. Or working at Reaper, actually, Punwuppy, because, you know, then your paycheck's just a coupon for product. Yes, Rohan can definitely confirm that living by Reaper is dangerous. I'm going to do a little bit of shadow with Auburn Shadow. I just want to darken down a little bit of that. Doing a gemstone this tiny is very difficult. But essentially, bright red, so clear red, a little drop of Auburn Shadow in the middle to make a slightly darker shadow for your gemstone. You want your highlight color to be, or your highlight to be in line with the highlight on the NMM gold. So I'm going to drop it at the top of the gem. Yeah, if you work here, you get a discount. You are correct, Norwegian Gadget Man. Which only makes it more dangerous.
A pretty nice discount, actually.
Yeah.
I might add. Basically, we almost get stuff at cost.
Yeah.
The company
depending
does a
on
good
what
job.
it is.
Yeah,
Depending on what it is, yeah.
It's really nice.
Yes, you get, Pugh, you get extra Anne. That's right. More Anne. Because Sadie is able to take over a lot of my mixing duties. So I am able to teach you guys more, which is awesome. Because, you know, hanging out with you is pretty nice, you know, laid back start to my day. Yes, definitely rewatch us on YouTubes. I'm going to grab some Lantern Yellow, mix it with my clear red to get a orangey color. It's a lot more yellow than red because the red is so much stronger than the yellow. Also, I want this highlight to show up. So once again, gemstones are actually a lot like metal when they're flat little gemstones like this. You have a highlight, you have a darker shadow under it, and then you have an under reflection. So I want to put a kind of an orangey color at the bottom of the gem. And it may not carry because this is such a tiny little gem. Even with reading glasses, I'm having issues seeing it. There we go. All right. I got it in there barely. Yeah, exactly, Coobs. It's been around. That's part of why I chose it, because I figured a lot of people would have it, and they might need help with it, because it's got a lot of really nice details, but they're very small. So I thought if I helped you with this, that a lot of you might actually be able to work on it directly, because you have the model at home. I'm going to try to re-emphasize that orange. Oop, I've got too much paint on my brush. See how the tip is distended here? It's not a very fine tip. That's not good. I have too much paint on my brush. I need to wipe it off. Always remember, you got to load your brush, but you also have to unload it to get that nice fine tip so that you can hit things. Doot. That's decent. All right, that's good. Now, I did mess up my lower, my lining right under that gem, though. Yes, always remember what your primary light source is, shadows under and to either side, and then a brighter highlight here for reflected light, because you always have light bouncing back at the model from all around it. When you're doing silver NMM, you can suggest the colors around it in your reflected highlights, which is the really, you know, cunning way to do silver, is that it's not just gray. But yeah, for something this tiny, that's probably wasted. I probably would not actually suggest colors unless I was feeling really masochistic, which, some days I am. I'm just going to reaffirm this dark line under the gem so I can set off the gem a little bit. I'm kind of got my highlight spread a little bit, so I've got my walnut, which is really a dark color, and I have to be very careful. When you're painting fine details, remember to paint on the exhale while I'm talking counts, because your hand will not shake nearly as much. Yeah, the problem with, and this camera is actually pretty decent. I mean, you can at least see it. But hopefully, actually what I might ask Justin, I don't know if we can really do it, but we could take a picture of this and put a photo up on one of our social medias so you guys could look at it. I do that on my Patreon. There's not really a good mechanism for doing it here on the Reaper shows. But on my Patreon, if I do a video and I feel like the video camera just hasn't necessarily captured it, or that a visual reference might be good, I do a companion PDF with photos.
If you want to move your hand, we can get that really close. Like, really close.
Okay, well, come and dial it in, baby. Come and dial it in, Tech Man. He's going to try to get really close so that people can freeze frame. Okay, guys? And you can see what I've done. Okay?
Get it where you want to put it.
How about here? There you go. Oh, it's going to be really, really close. There. Yeah.
Even closer. Keep going. Keep going.
Woo! Look at that, guys. Now you can see all my problems. Like, yeah? But if you look at, like, this is so much bigger than the model is. Imagine how many times we've blown it up to get this shot. Oh, have fun at work. The Minif.
Yeah, it can get really close. It's just not practical to work at this.
Right, yeah. Like, I couldn't work at this height. I would totally get it out of focus all the time. Although I could try. But, yeah, the problem is you have so little leeway, because it's either perfectly in focus or it's a little bit out of focus. All right, so here we go. So you can see now, let me get my brush wet so I can use it as a pointer. So to recap, figure out your light direction. You will have a bright highlight. It will run down all your details raised in pretty much a straight line from wherever your light is coming from. Here the light's diffused overhead. I took some liberties and made it go straight down the front of the staff, mostly. It's a little bit off center. Then you want dark shadows. So you can see in these creases between, on each braid, you've got a little dark shadow underneath the top highlight. Then underneath that, you have another reflection. So you've got essentially two reflections on each of these little braids, or two light sources, two highlights, I should say. And then to simulate light coming from the environment, you hit a highlight, but not white, on the sides. And I do hit white here on this top one because the light would actually hit it. And this other one is also closer to white right here at the top, because they're curving back in and they're facing the light source, so they would catch it. Whereas these guys are definitely only reflecting the underside of things. All right, so does that make sense to you guys? Any questions on the NMMs? This is 44008. It's an elf wizardress, old beans. She was actually featured as I think the monthly mini, one of the Bones Black monthly minis last year, and she was still on as a potential monthly mini, one that you could choose, I believe, this year. So yeah. Nebulous Missy, I'm jealous. My close-in vision totally left me when I turned 40, so I'm reading glasses girl now.
Those aren't mold lines, Puleth. Those are perfection lines.
Perfection lines, yeah. Well, I didn't have to actually clean up the mold lines on these models. Yeah, Puleth, I'm not going to clean mold lines for every mini I'm doing for this show. Not going to do it.
What's crazy is you can get even closer than that if you really want. No, I mean, like, I'd have to come back over and focus it, but you could fill the frame with that staff head.
Yeah,
really
it's just not, it's always a marriage between how, yeah, Vigo's peeps, I'm totally there. Like it's always a marriage between comfortable working distance and elevation and, keeping in focus and you guys seeing what I'm doing, so.
Because this camera will actually focus closer than your eye will.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just you can't paint here, right? No. I could try. We can try in a future show. We can experiment with me painting here. But yeah, now you can see how huge the brush is. You can also see how amazing the tip is. See that? Is that not amazing? Now you see how I can hit all these tiny details, right? Because I have a brush that does that. Nope, I just Lava Being. I just use 3 times reading glasses, between 2.5 and 3 time magnification. They're comfortable for me. I don't like optivisors or anything else, and I've never needed anything stronger. My regular vision is still fantastic. So yeah, but this is the illustration of why you need a really good brush. And if you have a brush that, you notice how it's paddle shaped, by the way, this is how you can get a really fine edge. So when you wet your brush, if you have to do a really fine detail, when you're taking the water off your brush, kind of paddle shape it. Go back and forth, flip it, make it into a paddle, because then when you get the edge, look how razor that is. And you can paint with that edge. So that's one way, and it doesn't abuse the brush much, you're just essentially asking it to do a different shape. Reshape it when you're done with it. But this is how you can get amazing, really fine details.
So the trade-off for that, Norwegian, is we could actually even move this closer. The problem being is it gives the painter 0 working area.
Yeah.
So we need them to be able to put their arms out comfortably, work, and move their head and all that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah, because you don't want to get like your,
right.
on neck and back. I've got enough neck and back problems. I don't need more.
Because early on, people don't actually know this, early on, I cluttered the living hell out of the working area for you guys when we were originally shooting videos with that camera and the other camera.
Yep.
But then people complained that they couldn't move. So.
Yeah, Iliade is absolutely right. That's depth of field. So if I move even a little bit too far down or I move even a little bit too far up, then you guys lose focus. So, and this is not a comfortable working posture for me. Like, it is really hard for me. And we have to manually adjust it because we don't want the camera to constantly keep hunting focus. So Justin and I could work maybe with getting me an elevated surface where I could rest my hands at like this elevation and perhaps get you guys a little bit. But getting this close, this is totally unworkable for painting. Yeah. Coffee Nerdery Beer, I actually do physical therapy exercises because I managed to screw up my back a few years ago. So every night I do stretches and realignment exercises to make sure that I haven't totally screwed myself up. And I do try to keep better posture when I paint, although that's always a fight. So yeah.
Yeah, good one there, Princess Zelda. He went to the grocery store. Princess Zelda went to the grocery store, and they've been sitting in the parking lot watching instead of going into the grocery store.
Sorry, Zelda. Sorry for putting off your groceries. Hey, at least you didn't get groceries and your ice cream isn't melting while you watch me. That could have been worse.
That looks awesome, man.
Well, thank you. If only I could paint at this level, but it's actually really hard
To see it. Yeah.
to see it. Yeah, and also it just hurts after a while. It's like weird posture for me.
Yeah, and
yeah.
The way that the zooms work on these particular cameras, as well as as I found out, that when you zoom in manually with the camera, you're getting fewer megapixels per inch. So if I zoom in really far and we let you work off the table and got basically the same distance, it would look really pixelated. It would turn the 1080 that we're streaming into probably 480.
Right. So
it wouldn't look good.
It's just the balance. I mean, the good part of all this is that you guys do actually get to see me paint, and if I actually learn how to adjust this camera, or if we get a different camera that works it a little bit better, a little less clunkier, then periodically during my process, I can come up here and show you guys and refocus and then go down and refocus. I mean, it takes extra time, but we could do that. But yeah. So,
all right, Miss Ann.
I think we are done. Yay, there I am. Super. So there was a lot of talking in this one, guys. We're trying to keep these smaller, but I know this one, like I said, had I been smarter, I would have done a fine detail episode, followed by an NMM episode, and then we would have put it all together on one model. But who cares? I got to talk extra. And I can now repeat myself when we go and do bigger superficies of NMM and also other fine details. So, all right.
Polith actually, so macro lenses will create the same depth of field problems that we have with this one.
Yeah, macro gets really focused, but it's a very shallow depth.
Correct. So if they move it all.
Trust us, we are not like amateurs at this. We've been working with cameras and miniature photography and videography for a long time.
I say a lot of thought goes into what we do on the show.
Yeah, and we're constantly fine tuning. I mean, you guys got to admit the new equipment is better than the old equipment. So we're still fine tuning and making it improve. I constantly make improvements at home on my my Patreon videos as well. So I'm also experimenting with a different camera at home, something kind of like this. So yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Well,
guys. Did you have fun? I hope you had fun.
hopefully you feel like you have a greater grasp of NMM.
Well, I'm a professional because I get paid for this, Maldrak. So, you know, by the very definition, I am actually a professional miniature painter. How do I manage thinning my paints without making it too runny? There's not a really good breakdown for that paladin because it varies by the pigment and also by the base of the paint. In general, I find glazes around 1-to-1, paint to water, in general. But some colors are going to be much stronger and some are going to be weaker and not need that much. So you really have to kind of learn how it looks, which is why I usually use the top part of my palette for just kind of spreading it across the surface, or even the space between the wells. I'll just do a quick brush stroke, and the amount that it colors the white surface is the amount it's going to color the surface of the miniature when I put it on. So you kind of have to 1-to-1 for glazes in general, 2-to-1 to 1.5-to-1 for layering, depending. Washes are definitely, we have our wash formula, and it's easy. It's brush on, sealer, water, and paint. So it's usually a 3-3-1, brush on, sealer, water, paint. But you can also modify that if you want it a little more translucent, a little less watery. You could do 4-2-1 of sealer, water, paint. But then again, you have to tune it because some paints are very see-through and you'll find you want it a little stronger, and some are very opaque and you'll find you might need a little more sealer or water. So yeah. NMM armor. Yeah, I mean, NMM's coming up. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up. I mean, there's so many topics. Every miniature gives you a different challenge. That's why you could watch infinite painting videos and still not learn everything. It's why I'm choosing a lot of different models for this show, so that we can talk about the peculiarities of these different models, and hopefully over time you guys will get a number of tips with models that are close to a model you may be working on, so that you can actually apply them. All right. Platinum is very similar to silver. I mean, they're very close to the same color. I would just put a little bit more of a darker, cloudier gray, maybe some dark blues in that platinum. Yeah, naked argents, man. Dragons need clothes or something. Or at least paint jobs. Come on, guys.
All right. Well, Miss Ann, thank you for...
I think we will wrap it. I'm otherwise going to just talk to our audience for another hour, and you need to like do things.
I need to get some upload stuff. And
and I need to go down and check on my dog, my poor little dog.
Oh yes,
my
Kiri.
pure huge dogs. Dragon pants, yes. Dragon pants need to be a thing.
So thank you again for stopping in this morning and showing them how to do a little bit of NMM.
So tomorrow I think we're going to paint some red and just do, it's going to be a little bit of a simpler tutorial probably. I'm going to work on one of the big Pit Fiend models and just kind of show you guys some tricks for painting textured surfaces, heavily textured surfaces, and painting red and getting it to look awesome. So yay! I will give my dog love. Yes, she had diarrhea last night, so it was a very hard night for both of us. So hopefully she does feel better soon. All right, yes, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, my Patreon has a special offer right now. If you go and sub at $5 level, you get all the $10 videos, and it's patreon.com/paintingbig. So there, my plug, my final plug.
Well, thanks, guys, and we will see you again at 1:30 for more Anne.
Yeah, more Anne, and this time we're going to be painting the base for the dragons, I think. I feel like kind of rocky today. We're going to rock out.
Awesome. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Ready for raid?
Yes, we're going.
Raid!
Spread the Reaper love, guys.
Yep, spread the Reaper love.